Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. It's Monday, October 10th. This is Africa 54. The Gambia has launched an urgent door-to-door campaign to remove cough and cold syrups from household and store shelves in the tiny West African country. The syrups are being blamed for the deaths of more than 60 children. Ndiho has more.
Gambian President Adama Barrow promised his country would boost health measures, including better quality control over imported medicine, after the mysterious death of dozens of children. Barrow says 66 children have died in the past 3 months from acute kidney failure, with fears that imported cough syrups are to blame.
Government will leave no stone unturned to get to the bottom of this incident. I urge you, however, to be vigilant enough to ensure that all medicines sold or used are safe and effective.
The wave of death from acute kidney injury has shocked the country of 2.4 million people, with the World Health Organization issuing an alert over 4 cough and cold syrups made by Median Pharmaceuticals in India over possible links to the death. In the village of Sirakunda, Aliyu Kijara mourned the loss of his son Muhammad.
So Muhammad was sick of a fever. That's how it starts. Then we went to the hospital. It falls on Thursday. So he was given some medications. Then we came back.
The 2-year-old's death was one of the many recent child deaths in Gambia related to acute kidney injuries. The Gambian Red Cross Society, the Ministry of Health, has dispatched hundreds of young people to collect suspect syrups through a house-to-house campaign.
It is a very, very concerning moment, a very sad moment, a moment that we should have a national day of mourning, regardless of where you belong, regardless of who you are. This is all as a result of incompetence. This is all as a result of an administration that really does not just care about the welfare of its people.
The WHO issued a medical product alert for 4 contaminated medicines identified in the country that have been potentially linked to acute kidney injuries and the 66 child death. While the contaminated products in the Gambia have been detected, they also may have been distributed to other countries, according to the World Health Organization.
The loss of these young lives is beyond heartbreaking for their families. The 4 medicines are cough and cold syrups produced by Median Pharmaceuticals Limited in India. WHO is conducting further investigation with the company and regulatory authorities in India.
WHO says counterfeit drugs are dead and a growing problem. With a global market roughly of $200 billion, fake drugs are the most lucrative, and Africa accounts for nearly 42% of the world cases. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Now, for the latest, here's a report by Sergio Brito in Banjul, Gambia.
A World Health Organization probe has revealed that at least 66 Gambian children have died from acute kidney injuries. The findings announced by WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus have revealed that the 66 child deaths may be linked to contaminated cough and cold syrups made by an Indian pharmaceutical company called Median Pharmaceuticals Limited. The WHO findings has angered a lot of Gambians, with many of them calling for the immediate sacking or resignation of the Health Minister, Dr. Amadou Lamine Samate. Gambians are also asking for stricter laws to control the medicines and pharmacy business in the tiny West African nation. In a press conference on Saturday, the Health Minister, Dr. Amadou Lamine Samate, told Gambian reporters that the number of AKI victims have now risen to 69 as of Saturday. As of now, Gambian authorities are still struggling to answer questions as to who authorized the sale of Median Pharma pharma products in the country. The Gambian President Adama Barrow have also reacted to the WHO findings. He has authorized the country's Medicines Control Agency through the Ministry of Health to suspend the license of the suspected importer and pharmacy who have been selling Median pharma products in the Gambia. On Saturday, police have also announced an investigation into the deaths of the 66 children. Sadio Brito from Banjul, the Gambia.
The death toll from a boat accident in Nigeria's southeastern state of Anambra has risen to at least 76, according to President Muhammadu Buhari. Officials say the vessel capsized Friday amid heavy flooding in the Ogbaru area of Anambra. Anambra is among 29 of Nigeria's 36 states who have experienced heavy flooding this year. Flood waters have washed away homes, crops and roads and affected at least 500,000 people. A local resident told Reuters that flooding has destroyed the major road linking 8 communities to the rest of the area. A Spanish Coast Guard vessel on Monday has rescued 23 migrants found in the Atlantic Ocean to the port of Aguinuguin on the island of Gran Canaria, according to the Red Cross. The Coast Guard says the migrants, all African men, were located as they traveled in a small boat 40 miles south of the island. Seeking a better life, every year thousands of people leave North Africa attempting to make the perilous journey to Europe. Last week, 33 people making the journey from Africa to Europe died in a small boat after traveling for 9 days, according to the lone survivor. The Coast Guard says they managed to find only 4 of the bodies, which were later taken to Gran Canaria. Now to Ethiopia, where at least 5 people were killed and 37 others injured in an airstrike on Friday in a village in the northern Tigray region, according to the director of the hospital that received the victims. The airstrike comes as mediation talks sponsored by the African Union in South Africa between the Tigrayan rebels and the Ethiopian government officials were postponed over the weekend due to logistical issues. AU Special Envoy Olusegun Obasanjo, former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, and South African Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo were expected to mediate the talks. For more insight on the conflict, I'm joined from Ogaden, Utah by John Mkomo, an economics professor at Weber State University. Professor Mbaku, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
You've been following this story for quite some time now, Professor. Why has this conflict taken so long to resolve?
Well, part of the problem has to do with the fact that the two sides to the conflict are not willing to provide the concessions that are necessary to resolve the issue. The people of Tigray and its government accusing the federal government in Addis Ababa of committing atrocities against the people. And Addis Ababa is arguing that the government in Tigray is not willing to remain part of Ethiopia, that it is engaging in activities that are destroying the fabric of Ethiopian society as a federal republic. And so these conflicting issues are making it much more difficult for the two sides to come together and secure the type of peace that is necessary for the country to move forward.
Professor, we know that for quite some time now, humanitarian aid has not been able to reach the people of Tigray. But what has this done to the civilian population in Tigray, and especially the underage children?
Well, what it has done is created a situation in which most of the people in the area, especially children, don't have access to basic services. In addition to the fact that children are no longer able to go to school, many of the children cannot get the type of health care, the type of health maintenance that children really need. And as a result, these children are being exposed to diseases that are going to make it very difficult for them to develop properly and grow up to be healthy adults. So in addition, there's a lack of food. Starvation has become a very severe problem in the area. COVID is still a problem in Ethiopia as it is in other countries in Africa. So the area does not have vaccines. It lacks electricity. it lacks basic necessities of life. So what is happening in the region is that the war is creating a situation in which many of the children, including nursing mothers, are going to have significant problems moving ahead in terms of health, in terms of nutrition, and the very basic issues or basic basic issues that make it very difficult for these people to grow up properly.
Professor, we know already these talks were postponed. They should have gone on in South Africa this past weekend. But what do you expect to see if indeed these talks resume and the parties involved sit down and have a discussion?
I think that the most important outcome of these talks is to secure a ceasefire in Tigray. And that's once hostilities are ceased, that would provide an opportunity for humanitarian aid to come in and stabilize the situation in Tigray, and then provide the environment for reconstruction of the area to begin. As we know, infrastructure has been destroyed, water systems have been destroyed, electricity destroyed. That system has to be restored, and so that the people of Tigray can begin to reconstruct their communities, provide for agriculture to begin, food production to begin, access to power, access to internet, access to education, especially for children to begin. It is only then that the federal government in Addis Ababa can then engage the authorities in Tigray to begin a process of negotiating for a permanent peace. So I think that what the peace talks in South Africa need to do is secure a peace so that reconstruction in Tigray can begin. Otherwise, it would be impossible to move forward.
Professor, thank you very much for your insight. Professor Baku, John Baku is an economics professor at Weber State University in Utah. South African police say they are charging a 21-year-old man with 6 counts of murder after half a dozen bodies, some of them in advanced stage of decomposition, were found at a block of an apartment in downtown Johannesburg. Police were called out after reports of a foul smell coming from one of the apartments and found the body of a woman, according to a police spokeswoman. The deceased woman was wearing clothing matching the description of an individual who had been reported missing earlier this month. 5 more bodies were later discovered outside the building. The suspect has not yet been named. Chad Junta Chief Mahamat Idris Deby Itno says a government of national union will be created in the coming days to steer the course towards elections. Deby says the government will put its heart and soul into ensuring that the will of the Chadian people is fully upheld. Deby made the comments at ceremonies where he was appointed transitional president. Chad is one of the world's poorest countries and has endured repeated uprisings and unrest since gaining independence from France in 1990. The rising death toll from Ebola in western Uganda is fueling fears in the East Africa region. Authorities and aid agencies are rallying their effort to contain the deadly virus. At least 10 deaths, 44 confirmed, and 20 probable cases have been reported. The International Rescue Committee has launched a response in conjunction with Uganda's Ministry of Health to raise awareness of the outbreak, especially among frontline health workers. A former Liberian rebel is on trial in Paris on charges of crimes against humanity, torture, and barbaric acts during the country's civil war in the 1990s. Kunti Kamara is notably accused of complicity in massive and systematic torture and inhumane acts against the civilian population committed in Liberia's Lofa County in 1993 to 1994. The trial by the Paris Criminal Court is possible under a French law that recognizes universal jurisdiction for crimes against humanity and acts of torture. Rights groups are hailing it as an important step to bring justice to victims. Calm has returned to southern Africa, and so have most of Kweonga's inhabitants. Rwandan troops have secured the key districts of Palma and Mochimboa da Praia in Mozambique, formerly jihadist stronghold. But last week, a conflict tracker recorded a string of attacks, including the beheading of a farmer and clashes between the militants and security forces, known locally as Al-Shabaab. Analysts say the jihadist groups has splintered into smaller cells and started to stage incursions further south.
The only incidences we get are isolated incidents of one attack here and there, but very few people. It's not really a main stronghold like the way it was in Mosimbo and Praia anywhere. So we can say to a large extent that the insurgent has been defeated. The next phase will be to try and see if the security sector can be reformed to such a point that they will be poised to deal with security after the departure of the Rwanda Security Force. And I don't think I can put a timeline to any of these activities because it's a process. We are assessing, we are evaluating slowly by slowly to see if the recovery can take place. And you can see that civilians are returning in large numbers. So let's wait and see how it unfolds.
Well, right now things are a little bit more controlled. I would say things are improved. Yeah, if we compare to the moments that the situation took place, the attack, to now, I would say things are better now. Because people can move, we can do everything, we can go to school, we can buy wherever we want. So things are okay now, I would say that. So if people could be given the opportunity to improve in their lives, actually creating much more working opportunities for young people, because if we see a large majority of young people don't have what to do, and others have never been to school, and they only have religion beliefs and lack of education. So it's easy. I think it's easier to manipulate them because they don't know where to go or what to do. So
the European Union training Mozambican troops, and Rwanda is pledging assistance to smoothen a future handover to local forces. Still to come, the White House considers steps to prevent an increase in global oil prices. Stay with us.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
From around the world. Let's go.
In other news, an explosion which caused the partial collapse of a bridge linking the Crimean Peninsula with Russia damages an important supply artery for the Kremlin's war effort in southern Ukraine. South Sudan deports at least 13 Ethiopian and Eritrean nationals for entering the country illegally. And Uganda commemorated 60 years of independence from British colonial rule on Sunday. Deadly Russian missile strikes hit Ukraine's capital Monday, part of a barrage of what the Ukrainian military says was 75 missiles launched at the country. Kyiv police say most of the strikes hit the center of the city, killing at least 5 people and wounding at least 12 others. Missiles struck busy areas including parks and tourist sites. Explosions were also reported in multiple other areas, including the western city of Lviv, the central city of Dnipro and the eastern city of Kharkiv. Ukraine says it shot down 41 of the Russian missiles. The White House is considering steps to prevent an increase in global oil prices. OPEC, a group of oil-producing nations, has decided to cut its oil production. VOA's White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara reports.
Less than 5 weeks before midterm elections, with Democrats hoping to cling to control of Congress, the Biden administration was having some success in keeping gas prices in check, down by more than $1 per gallon from earlier this year, despite the war in Ukraine driving up the price of oil. But that was before this week's decision by OPEC Plus to cut oil production by 2 million barrels a day starting next month, a move President Joe Biden called short-sighted.
Disappointment, and we're looking at what alternatives we may have.
Those alternatives include releasing massive amounts of crude oil from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, potentially relaxing sanctions on Venezuela to allow new supply in the market, and calling out energy companies for taking record profits as prices soar.
Energy companies need to reduce retail prices to reflect the price that they're paying for the wholesale gas.
Congress is considering legislation to punish top oil producer Saudi Arabia, the de facto leader of OPEC and one of Washington's key strategic allies. Observers say the relationship with Riyadh goes beyond oil.
Whether they look at sort of legal implications for the OPEC cartel and sort of how to break that, but also has to consider and think through very carefully what the relationship going forward with Saudi Arabia looks like, given that the United States is a significant arms provider to Saudi Arabia. There are American troops there. There are other issues at play, including Iran.
As rising gas prices keep inflation near a 40-year high, a key issue in the November midterms, Biden struggles in the polls.
Looking back over the last 60 years, we do see that a president with about a 40% approval rating like President Biden is currently, his party's never won more seats than they currently had in a midterm election. Indeed, on average, they lose about 30 seats.
The White House has not confirmed it is considering a ban on exports of American gas, a measure the oil industry says would disrupt global energy markets. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Washington.
African communities here in Washington gathered over the weekend to celebrate their cultures. The annual Africa Festival highlights the cultural diversity and the economic contribution of the Africans in the region. VOA's Thierry Kaoré has more.
They came from the four corners of Washington, D.C. to celebrate Africa. Various musical artists performed, among them Malian Sheikh Jabate.
I represent Africa, as I have always said. As an artist, the city of DC is growing. I have so many students here, children that I have mentored in music. We have worked so much, so for me, an event like this is very important.
We come for a very noble cause. As good African and good American, we really support the African diaspora and all our fellow Africans who are here to stand together for Africa.
According to the Washington Post, about 200,000 Africans live in the Washington, D.C. area. They are involved in various sectors, including restaurant, fashion, music, and dance. This festival also offers opportunities to talk about programs ranging from education, employment to health.
Investing in health is very important. Cancer is a problem that is very serious among immigrants. Cancer is present. Whether it's prostate cancer, breast cancer, it is there. So, for cancer, we know what the formula is. The earlier it is detected, the better it is treated.
The Mayor's Office of African Affairs has been hosting this festival every year since 2010 to give more visibility to the African community in the area and discuss how it can access local services and resources.
This is
such a great opportunity to get all our DC residents, African DC residents, to be here together and really enjoy their uniqueness and differences in the same way. It's an opportunity for them to come and get the different resources that are here, being available, being offered from the DC government. If they're not able to make it during Monday to Friday, this is such a great opportunity to be here during an event where they will also be able to get services in the languages that they speak and that they want.
Like all other communities, the African community needs to be represented in the DC government. In addition, we must show them and give them all the necessary information so that they can live in harmony like all other communities.
The DC Africa Festival did not take place last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but according to the Mayor's Office of African Affairs, about 500 people attend the festival this year. Thierry, Kaoré, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.